The clock on the wall of the Oak Creek precinct didn't tick. It thudded. Each second was a heavy hammer blow against the silence of a room that had seen too much. Detective Marcus Thorne stared through the one-way glass at a man sitting perfectly still. The man wasn't a monster, at least not on the surface. He was a neighbor, a grieving friend. A man who had brought coffee to the search parties and wept with the family. For 6 months, he had been the pillar of a broken community. He wasn't even on the radar. He was the good guy who stayed late to help clean up after the vigil. But on the table between them lay a single grainy photograph, a detail so small it had been overlooked by 2 forensic teams and 3 lead investigators. It was a reflection in a window, a shadow where no shadow should be, and a wristwatch that told a lie. In the world of true crime, the devil doesn't just hide in the details. He lives there. Tonight, we peel back the layers of a case that redefined the meaning of hiding in plain sight. Welcome to Midnight Crime Vault. The year was 2018. The setting, Silver Falls, a town where the most exciting event was usually the annual Harvest Festival. It was the kind of place where people left their back doors unlocked and knew their neighbors' children by name. At the heart of this idyllic setting was the Miller family. Thomas, a local high school teacher, and Sarah, a dedicated nurse. They lived in a colonial-style house on the edge of the woods, a house that would soon become a monument to a nightmare. The environment was lush, green, and deceptively peaceful. But as autumn bled into winter, the atmosphere shifted. On a cold November night, when the fog rolled off the nearby lake and swallowed the street lamps, Sarah Miller vanished. There was no struggle, no broken glass, no frantic 911 call. Just an empty bed, a cold cup of tea on the nightstand, and a front door swinging gently in the wind. The town was paralyzed. How does a woman disappear from her own home while her husband sleeps just inches away? The timeline of that night remains one of the most chilling sequences in criminal history. At 10:30 p.m., Sarah finished her shift at the hospital. Security footage shows her walking to her car, waving to a colleague. She arrived home at 10:52 p.m. Thomas claimed he was already in bed, drifting in and out of sleep. He heard her come in, heard the familiar click of her heels on the hardwood, and the sound of the kettle. He shouted a sleepy "good night, honey," and heard a soft "good night" in return. But here is where the shadows begin to stretch. At 2:15 a.m., Thomas woke up to a chilling draft. He reached out, but Sarah's side of the bed was cold. Not just empty cold. He walked into the kitchen. The kettle was still on the stove, the water long since evaporated, the metal starting to glow a dull, dangerous red. The back door was wide open. The woods beyond were a wall of black. Imagine the sensation, the silence of a house that feels like it's holding its breath. Thomas called her name. Nothing. He stepped out onto the porch, the frost biting his bare feet. He saw nothing but the swaying pines. By 2:45 a.m., the police were on the scene. They found Sarah's car in the driveway, her purse on the passenger seat, and her phone sitting on the kitchen counter. It was as if she had simply evaporated into the midnight mist. The initial investigation was frantic. Search dogs were brought in, sniffing through the dense undergrowth of the Silver Falls woods. They found nothing. No scent trail, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. The community rallied around Thomas Miller. He was a man destroyed by grief, his face gaunt, his eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights. He spent every waking hour handing out flyers and pleading with local news stations. Among the supporters was his best friend and neighbor, David Vance. David was the one who organized the meals, the one who coordinated the search grids, and the one who stood by Thomas during the most grueling interrogations. David was a local carpenter, known for his precision and his quiet, helpful nature. He was the kind of man who would fix your fence for free and never ask for a thank you. He was, by all accounts, the perfect citizen. The police looked at everyone, of course. They checked Thomas's alibi, his phone records, his history. Everything was clean. They checked the local predators, the drifters, the delivery drivers. Every lead turned into a dead end. For months, the case went cold. The vibrant colors of autumn were replaced by the skeletal gray of winter, and the hope of finding Sarah alive began to wither like the fallen leaves. To understand the gravity of this silence, one must understand the psychology of Silver Falls. It was a town built on the foundation of mutual trust, a place where the concept of a predator among the flock was not just terrifying but unthinkable. Detective Thorne, however, was a man who lived in the cracks of that foundation. He spent his nights rewatching hours of grainy CCTV footage from the gas station 3 miles away, looking for a car that didn't belong or a face that lingered too long. He began to obsess over the acoustics of the Miller house, wondering how a woman could be taken without a sound. He even moved into a nearby motel to be closer to the woods, walking the same path Sarah might have been dragged through. The breakthrough didn't come from a DNA match or a high-tech satellite image. It came from a digital camera belonging to a teenage boy who had been taking long exposure shots of the stars on the night Sarah disappeared. The boy Leo lived 3 houses down. He was an amateur astronomer, fascinated by the clarity of the autumn sky in the valley. In one of his shots taken at 1:14 a.m., the background showed the Miller house. It was a dark silhouette against the sky, but the zoom lens captured something the naked eye couldn't see. In the reflection of the upstairs window, there was a flash of light. It was the glow of a digital watch face. The police analyzed the light frequency and the height of the reflection. It didn't match Thomas. It didn't match Sarah. It matched the height of someone much taller. Thorne began to re-examine every piece of footage from that night. He went back to a Ring doorbell camera from across the street, a device that had been dismissed because it only captured a sliver of the Miller's driveway. At 1:12 a.m., a figure is seen walking across the edge of the frame. The figure is wearing a heavy jacket and a cap. For months, everyone assumed it was a neighbor walking a dog or a late-shift worker. But Thorne noticed something about the figure's gait, a slight hitch in the right step, an old injury perhaps. He remembered seeing David Vance limp slightly during a search party 3 days after the disappearance. David had claimed he'd tripped over a root in the woods. But the detail that changed everything was the watch. David Vance owned a very specific, limited edition tactical watch that emitted a faint blue glow when the backlight was activated. In the long exposure photo, that blue glow was unmistakable. David hadn't always been a carpenter in Silver Falls. 10 years prior, he had lived 2 states away under a different name, leaving just as a series of unexplained home invasions began to plague his neighborhood. He was a master of entry, a man who understood the mechanics of locks and the psychology of fear. He didn't just break into houses. He inhabited them. He would spend hours in the crawl spaces of his victims, listening to their breathing, learning their rhythms. When they executed a search warrant on David's workshop, they didn't find a body immediately. What they found was much worse. Behind a false wall in his tool shed, behind rows of neatly organized chisels and saws, they found a collection of trophies items belonging to Sarah that had never been reported missing: a hair tie, a single earring, a prescription bottle, and most damningly, a journal. It wasn't Sarah's journal. It was David's. In it, he had documented months of stalking her, mapping her movements, learning the creaks of her floorboards, and even discovering where the spare key was hidden. He had been a ghost in her life long before he became her executioner. He had waited until the perfect moment, entering the house while Thomas slept and whispering to her in the kitchen. The goodnight Thomas heard wasn't from his wife. It was a recording David had played on his phone to buy himself time. The sheer calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. David had used his position as a trusted friend to monitor the investigation from the inside. Every time the police shifted their search to the north, David knew. Every time a new lead was discussed in the local diner, David was there, listening. He had even comforted Thomas while knowing exactly where Sarah was buried. The chilling realization hit the town like a tidal wave. The man who had been helping them search for Sarah was the one who had hidden her in the very woods they were combing. During the interrogation, David remained eerily calm, his voice a low, steady drone as he described the purity of his obsession. He spoke of Sarah not as a human being, but as a puzzle he had finally solved. David Vance eventually led them to the site, a shallow grave beneath an old oak tree he had helped Sarah plant 3 years prior during a neighborhood beautification project. The irony was a jagged pill for the community to swallow. The motive was a twisted obsession, a love that could only exist in the darkness of a fractured mind, fueled by a lifelong resentment of those who seemed to have the perfect life he could never attain. He was sentenced to life without parole, but the scars on Silver Falls remain. The house on the edge of the woods was eventually torn down, the land left to grow wild, as if the earth itself wanted to forget what had happened there. It serves as a haunting reminder that the people we trust the most are often the ones with the most to hide. They are the ones who know our routines, our weaknesses, and our secrets. They are the ones who hold the flashlight while you look for what they've already destroyed. As the sun sets over the valley today, the silence is no longer peaceful. It is heavy with the weight of the unknown. How many other good neighbors are watching from their windows right now? How many other friends are keeping track of your lights going out? What do you think? Was there a sign everyone missed, or was David Vance truly a master of disguise? Could someone in your own circle be hiding a secret this dark? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We want to hear your thoughts on this case. Do you believe the justice system did enough, or are there still pieces of this puzzle missing? If you found this case as haunting as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Midnight Crime Vault for more deep dives into the shadows of the human psyche. Your support helps us keep these stories alive and allows us to continue uncovering the truth behind the world's most mysterious crimes. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a midnight upload. Until next time, keep your doors locked, look twice at the people you think you know, and watch the shadows closely. Sleep well, if you can.